on YouTube. So I want to start posting on here more because I cannot stand TikTok right now. Instagram is okay, but this whole science-based, evidence-based, whatever-based stuff out there right now it's gotten so out of control. It's absolutely crazy right now. And so my hope with some longer form content is just to be able to provide way more context to things. I think the biggest topic that I see right now that 100%, in my opinion, needs more context is this whole high frequency, low rep range, all this stuff. I don't want to say all, majority of that content is being produced under the assumption that all trainees want to, quote, maximize gains, if you will. And that's just not reality. Most trainees are just normal, regular, everyday people who need to work out for health-related reasons and genuinely enjoy working out, have some goals along the way, stuff like that. And so with that context, a lot of those recommendations just don't really apply to a lot of people. Sure, if you want to maximize hypertrophy, there might be some good reason to use those things as starting places. It's not the end-all be-all to hypertrophy, in my opinion. The other thing that I've noticed from that, we'll call it camp of high frequency, which I'll touch on in a moment, and low rep range mafia, is that they're not training people in person. When you actually train real people for as long as I have, and I don't even consider myself a seasoned trainer, and I've been training people for 15 years, and I'm still what I would call an intermediate in my opinion. There's people who've been doing this way longer who have trained thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and they can tell you right away that those protocols don't work for everyone. They just don't. There's too much context to put everyone into this box. So I want to touch on the high frequency thing. Right now, what these evidence-based folks are calling high frequency is upper lower rest, or upper lower rest, rest. Let's do some simple maths here for a second. If you do upper lower rest, rest, you are hitting a body part twice over the course of a 7-day period. Okay? 2 out of 7 is like 29%. That's not high. That's not high frequency. That's actually low. It's low frequency. It's below 50% of that 7-day rotation. Okay, so that's already a flaw in the logic of high, right? High would be 3.5 to 4 times over the course of 7 days, right? And where things don't make sense for this crowd is that the evidence-based high frequency, low reps group are constantly talking about fatigue. And you can't do more than that because you're going to be too fatigued. Well, you're already not doing something high. So chances are you actually have more room to do something because you're already doing low frequency. A body part split, right? That's generally one body part every 7 days or 5 days or 6 days, whatever it is. That's low frequency too. It's just lower frequency. So upper lower rest is 29% frequency if you go with a 7-day schedule. That's not very high. That's low. It's not as low as 1 every 5 to 6 days, but it's not high. And maybe your definition of high is different, but for me, 29% is not very high. So keep that in mind too, is that there's so much context in these things, and the problem that I see is that a lot of the upper, lower, low rep crowd making right now is just, it's all black and white. There's no context in any of this stuff. I'm going to touch on the low rep range stuff a little bit. Personally, I understand when they say, and when I say they, I mean the low rep people, they'll be like, oh, well, what's the point of the first 20 reps in a set of 25, right? If the last 5 reps are the ones that count, and they're just fatiguing, right? One, fatiguing, what they generally mean is your performance drops, right, significantly, or it starts to drop. I'll touch on that in a moment. But 2, if you were always doing 4 to 6 reps, which is fine, doesn't really matter, but you got to remember, you're doing roughly 85% plus of your 1RM consistently. Cool, that's fine. Again, more context. Some people just need and like and enjoy to go to the gym, okay? Their concern is not maximizing. They work out for a plethora of reasons, and in that process, they might enjoy some hypertrophy, okay? With that context, when someone says that, what's the point of the first 20 in a set of 25? Well, I can't lift 90% of my 1RM today. I had a crummy night of sleep, but it's so part of my routine. I need to go to the gym, and I feel good when I go. I feel like shit when I don't go. Well, the point of those first 20 reps in a set of 25 is that now I only have to do 40% of my 1RM, and they'll also follow up with saying, well, you get to similar games, so what's the point? Well, that's the point, is I don't have to lift 90% of my 1RM. I can only do 40%, not put so much stress on the body, and get the similar outcome. So why wouldn't I do that? Right? If you physically cannot do 85 to 90% that day, but you can drop all the way down to 40% and get a similar outcome, what's wrong with that? I'm going to touch on the 2 fatiguing thing. It doesn't make much sense too. Because by the same logic, why would I do more than 1 lift per session? If those high rep sets are too fatiguing for the next lift, the next day, etc., well, why would I even do 1 lift, or a second lift, if that 1 lift is going to fatigue me for my second lift, and it's only in a compound? Why would I do a 3rd lift if I've done 2 fatiguing activities to get to my 3rd lift? And then why would I do a 4th lift? And on top of that, why would I do a next day? So the whole 2 fatiguing thing, it doesn't make much sense when you stop it there. You have to add the appropriate context. It's 2 fatiguing for what? It's 2 fatiguing for who? It's 2 fatiguing for who when, right? There's too many pieces of the puzzle to just make black and white claims with this stuff. And so me personally, I do what I would call high frequency training. What I would call high frequency training. I actually train some body parts 4 to even 6 times over the course of 7 days. I personally don't like to take rest days. I've, in my opinion, dialed in my programming enough that allows me to actually go 7 days per week, and I'm okay with certain days not being as stimulating as others. I'm okay with doing a light day for the sake of going in, getting a pump, moving around, etc. However, with that context, I'm training that muscle more than 29% over the course of 7 days. Okay, so me personally, I would consider that high frequency. There's just too many variables to just land on. You have to do upper lower. You can't do more than 8 reps for the reasons of, if you do a body part split, it's low frequency. Well, yeah, so is upper lower rest, rest. It's just a body part is lower frequency, but you're still doing low frequency if you're doing upper lower rest. It's hard to say that a set of 20 is too fatiguing when, I don't know about you guys, but lifting 40% of your 1RM, can you walk away from that compared to 90% for 5 reps? Most people can. If you get a similar outcome, maybe not as effective, but if it's a similar outcome, why not sprinkle that in if your schedule allows and that's what you enjoy? So the whole point of this is to just share that there's way too much context to just buy in, all in, and say you have to do upper lower, you have to do low reps. What happens when you actually start training people in front of you and they don't like that? They are not training with enough effort to even make 4 to 6 reps work, right? Because that's the other thing, is that we're sharing information. If you're sharing information and giving advice, I'm going to assume that you are a trainer. And if you are a trainer, at the end of the day, you have to produce results for people. If you don't, people will take their money elsewhere. They're paying you for a service. If you're just sharing information to share it, in my opinion, you should probably disclaimer that. Otherwise, it's not very ethical. But if you were there to produce results for people, how are you going to train 1,000 people and make them all train the exact same way? When Sally had a 5-hour night of sleep, Jane had 9 hours, John is 49, Jeff is 22, Richard works a desk job, and Frank is working in construction. Are we really going to expect them to be all the same? Likely not. And what happens when they're likely not the same? Well, you're probably going to have to go out of those bounds of an upper-lower split and always low rep ranges. There's way too much context to just say it's that all the way across. Okay? So I'm going to continue to make way more videos on topics like these, because I feel like that whole area has gotten so blown out of proportion. And it's always anecdote doesn't matter and the studies show this. Cool. Well, I tend to lean on the fence of results-based, right? I am intrigued by studies and research. I think it gives you interesting tools and valuable assets in the tool belt. But what happens when I have to train someone in person and produce results for them? And if I do what this 8-week study says for a client that is going on 8 years, I don't know, man. I feel like that is not painting a full picture. And if anything, lifting history, right, not an 8-week study that was done last month, if we look at lifting history for the last 70, 80 years, we can see that people have produced hypertrophic results, body composition results with a plethora of different ways. How many stories, and if the answer is none, then I can tell you're not in the real world of fitness, but how many stories do you hear about so-and-so down the road who lost 40 pounds just by eating better and going to Pilates and maybe saw some muscle tone? Are we going to say that Pilates doesn't work because it's not upper, lower, and low rep range stuff? No, context matters. What's the goal? What do they like? What fires them up? What's their motivation to train? All those things are stuff that unfortunately can't be hyper measured in a study. Not to mention, people in a research paper, they go home, they might do other stuff, they might adhere to the training program. We don't know. It's hard to manage that type of stuff. But my point is that lifting history shows us that we can produce results many different ways. And most importantly, in my opinion, is what gets someone to actually adhere to the training program long term. Long term. You're not planning on training and lifting for only 8 to 12 weeks, right? You're hopefully planning to train for 8, 12, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, depending on when you start training. Are we really expecting people to be so robotic and train the exact same way that whole time? Especially if we know that there are many different ways to produce a very similar outcome. What if we varied things? What if there was a period of time when you did upper lower and you did the low rep stuff? You just kind of grow out of it for a little bit. What if I wanted to change something up for a couple weeks? Is there anything wrong with that? I'll answer for us. No, there's nothing wrong with that. It is what it is. That's how this stuff works long term. So hopefully some of you enjoyed hearing me rant and ramble. If I sparked some emotion out of you, hopefully that's for a good reason, and that the whole goal, at least moving forward, hopefully with the channel, is just to help us think about this stuff a little bit differently and not so much black and white, research only this. Let's get actual humans in front of us and let's start sharing case studies of how we helped someone reach a goal. I would love to see that out of some of the fitness influencers out of there, right? Like right now, the current trend is show some cool, sexy video, and this is the latest research study. Okay, cool. How did you apply that though? Show me that you then took that research study and applied it to 50 of your clients. Some of you probably don't even have 50 clients, and that's the point. But apply it to 50 of your clients, and let's actually see who is getting results. And let's also share what their challenge was when they came to you as a client. What did Ryan go to so-and-so for help? I wanted to achieve X, Y, and Z. Cool. How did this coach help that person? I would love to start seeing that, and not we have the evidence to say this. For who? For these 9 kids that never trained before, like, I mean, that's great for them. Cool, fantastic. But I've got 150 other clients over here. Is it going to work for them? I don't know, because we're just basing that off of 9 people, right? So, in summary, we don't have to be dogmatic. Up or lower isn't the only way. Low rep ranges aren't the only way. 29% over the course of 7 days is not very high frequency. It's low. It's just that a body part split is lower. And we need to get better at providing context to all this stuff. So hopefully that was helpful. If you enjoyed that, stick around for the next one.